Welcome, beautiful humans. I've got with me another amazing soul who goes by the name of David Boyle. David, thank you for
Mm.
being here today.
Of course. Thank you too. Yeah, it's good to see you.
So good to meet you and to see you. Very often, my first meeting of someone is not here, but you know multiple people that I know, and it was so aligned. So, y'all, I'm gonna give David a nice, lovely intro in just a minute. But first and foremost, if you are a return watcher, thanks for being here. I believe so fully that by sharing our own stories and bearing witness to others, it's healing, it's freeing, it's where it's at. If you are new to this, thanks for being here. I was about to say weekly series, but I was actually just telling David I'm in the middle of a massive breakthrough, which is crazy and scary and fun and all of the things. And one of the things I started noticing with the series I'm doing is, I think the flow for me, for you, I'm moving them to every other week now. So this is now a bi-monthly thing. So I have to get out of my autopilot of saying weekly series. And so if you are new to this is a space where I go into an interview process with people, and it is to illustrate living a bold life. But the cool thing here is some of these episodes you hear about the big grandiose leaps, and others you hear things where living a bold life might have simply been a season of no, or a season of, I mean, who knows, right? Sometimes it's getting out of the dang bed, right? And so what I love about this is we get to see that living a bold life is all encompassing. And it's really whatever is feeling bold for you in that moment. And the idea is to inspire, to empower, and to hopefully get you to see, we're all just out there doing our best. And we're going to get to hear some of David's bold journey, and to get to be in the space with him. And so to give you a little bit of idea of who I'm with here on the screen, David Boyle is an artist also known as Shrink. That's already bringing me curiosity. I must know more. In addition to being an artist, he is a coach, mental health advocate, and public speaker. So important now more than ever. David guides people to make powerful transformations so that they can lead a life with confidence and purpose. He is an accomplished artist and art instructor, and has helped people succeed in creating a flourishing life that they envision. His main value in action is a strong sense of curiosity in the world. Starting off with sentence one, I love it. When he was 20 years old, he nearly died by suicide during his first psychotic episode. 3 more attempts followed over the next 10 years of his life with schizophrenia. Though the voices drew him in, David learned to draw himself out. So beautiful. He identifies this trait as grit and resiliency. David's goal in his life is to intentionally make his dreams a reality. But first, he had to clear his mind and focus on creating a dream worth living. I love that. Your bio is, to me, like, let's just get off the surface level crap and let's dive in. You're a man of my own heart.
Well, thank you, and thank you for reading that too. It's sometimes just to get to that level, I feel like, I used to feel like I was hiding something,
Yeah.
like I don't know what they would think of me, or or sometimes even early on, I felt like they could already hear what I was thinking, so they already knew, so I got to a point where I had to just come out and say it. And it's helped a lot, and I've learned a lot from doing that too.
Yeah. And, I personally believe, in our society, in many societies, we have created so much stigma
Mm.
around things that don't need stigma. They're human things.
Hmm.
And so what I know to be true is there's going to be somebody or some bodies that watch this, and maybe get to step out of shame they're carrying for
Yeah.
a label or something. I had another woman, if anyone is wanting to know who I'm speaking of, Marin, if you go back through the other episodes, she shared about some sexual trauma and whatnot. And well, one, I was just so honored and privileged that people bring these vulnerable
Hmm.
conversations here. And two, just knowing that whoever needed to hear it and see it was going to. And I believe that that's how we're going to take away the stigma and the shame that so many people are in, is just to say, hey, this can be a normal thing for people. You know,
Hmm.
we're all dealing with something. We're all dealing with something.
Yeah, it's true too. And sometimes when you can learn from both ways. You learn from holding some of that stuff in and not telling anybody, and you also learn um, by creating this level of trust with the other person that you might share it with, right? Like people that you want to share it with. There's this safe space where you can feel vulnerable and share that with somebody who might give you this more empathic connection, um, which makes it just that much more easier to share. Because otherwise, it's once you say it, it's almost like you can't take it back.
Right, right, right. Yeah, and then it's trusting, right? What is that person that I shared this with going to do with that? And just having to fully trust.
Yeah, that's right. And knowing why you're doing it too. Like I remember the first time I was given the opportunity to share my diagnosis and what I went through, um, with a group of people. And I remember I like waited out on both of my feet, like, all right, if I do this, what could happen? Best case, worst case scenarios. And then on this foot, I was like, if I did or I didn't. And I got to a point where it's like, why am I doing this? And it got me back to the point of just helping other people. And that's like, all right, so let's see how this goes.
Yeah. And I'm assuming it went all right, because here you are and you're still continuing to share that.
Yeah, of course. And I think sometimes too, it's, you never know. Like I've said things before, like what I've experienced with my own condition and the past. It's been, Jen, I told you right before we started this, it's been 13 years since I had my first episode.
Mhm.
And like I've done some things in there and had some experiences in there that, you share, and it's sometimes it comes out the way you want to share it and sometimes it doesn't. And and sometimes you're judged for that.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's worked and sometimes it's really not so much so, but I take from each of those experiences and I can learn and move forward and still share that with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am grateful that you're here. I'm grateful that you're sharing it here. And we get to put this powerful conversation out into consciousness,
Yeah, all right.
which, yeah, that sounds fun, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I'm just imagining the journey you've been on and how many bold moves there must have been just inside of all of that entire experience. And yeah, we might kind of just shift gears and play around a little bit. These
Yeah.
conversations are all very fluid and very informal. We kind of have that structure, and then sometimes we veer over here because that makes more
All
sense.
right.
But it's bold to share that. It was probably bold to start making moves to, as you said, to learn to draw yourself out. Um, is that kind of where some of the bold moves that we talk about in these shows, is that kind of where you were thinking of sharing from today?
Yeah, I would say both. I mean, I would give you a little more of a background of what it was kind of like for me with
Yeah,
the diagnosis and the symptoms specifically
yeah, that would
of
be
the
great.
diagnosis. And then the second part of it is, I told you I've been living the last 13 years with
Mhm.
diagnosed with schizophrenia. The last 3 years I've done it without medicine. So that was another big, bold move for me in that,
Yeah.
and finding the support in that was, something that took a lot of effort based on, history that was like, look, you struck out. how many times?
Right.
And the reason was because of not medicine, you know, and it's like there's who's going to support you in that? And it was that's where the grit and resiliency comes from. Like once you identify that kind of thing, it's like, oh, I really believe I can do this. And getting your support and understanding and wit about you as you're taking those steps, I think was valuable for me.
Yeah. So I would love to hear first, that first point you mentioned of the symptoms, like when it was kind of like maybe unfolding for you.
Sure. Yeah, that was wild. It was something like, you know, I've heard people talk about a midlife crisis before, and it was almost like my midlife crisis was condensed and then thrown at me all at once at 20 years old. Like it was so overwhelming. I was I was studying design here in Charlotte at an art school, and I was taking 19 credit hours per quarter trying to get my bachelor's degree done in 3 years. And I mean, summer school and everything, and also working at a jazz cafe.
Mhm.
And it was Christmas time, and all this stress was going on, and the TV just started talking to me while I was working on a project in my apartment, and it was like, I mean, it was unearthing some of my unconscious self in ways that, you know, reflecting, I can see it, but in the moment, it was like it was embarrassing.
Sure, sure.
It was hurtful, and it was confusing,
But
and it led me to a place that was seemingly out of my control, you know, like it was almost like all of that compounded, and it was like I just wanted it to stop, and that's where I mean, it took over me, and I almost ended my life because of it, um that day. And I didn't even, you know, it's kind of coming to me now. I didn't realize how close I was to that, you know, that instance, and I was so far out of my own
yeah,
space that I didn't even realize what I was doing.
right, right.
Yeah, it and the more you learn from that, you know, like I was hospitalized. I was, my brother was my roommate at the time, and he like packed me up in the car, and we drove all the way to Pinehurst. It's like 2 hours away where
Mhm.
my mom lived. And when she saw me, like I was standing in the yard, and I had like a frisbee and a tennis ball and some sticks and things piled up in my arms, and the dog was talking to me. And I thought, you know, they call it in the clinical space, they call it thought broadcasting.
Ah,
So I thought people knew my thoughts, and it was so. I mean, it seemed so real because people were responding to them. So it threw me for a loop, something I've never experienced before.
yeah, well, and I mean that would make sense that it felt real, right? Because like I lead a monthly visualization, and you might have done some
Mm,
with Kim.
mm,
And what I always tell people is your brain doesn't know whether you're doing it or not.
that's
To
right.
your
Mm,
brain, it's real. So everything in this visualization, this is really happening. So that makes sense, right? That it would feel real because you were having the experience.
of course, not only the visual experience, is that visceral feeling that made it so much more real, because my body would respond in a
Right,
certain way,
right.
or I get, you know, goosebumps, or even like my body would just shift in a position like, and then I would read into it. And you know what I love is a love-hate relationship with my mind, and probably many other people's. It's so creative and tells such vivid stories that you could believe it.
Oh yeah.
And how you use that is what makes it, you know, the double-edged sword.
Yeah. Oh gosh. And David, for anyone who is not well versed in this, is schizophrenia a little bit I don't mean like bipolar, like similar. I mean to where oftentimes the markers don't get triggered till maybe like early adulthood or something like that. Does that happen to be true for that as well?
It is, and
Okay,
there's so much around this, but they've narrowed it down so much so, like,
I'm with you. I'm
um,
just shutting my door. I
sure.
leave my door open to let the windows. We're getting a nice breeze in Charlotte today, but I have my other half with me now. All right.
So for men, it tends to be a little earlier in age,
Okay.
more so, and then females could develop it a little later in age.
Okay.
Um, early mid to late teens for males, and probably mid to late teens, early 20s even for females. Maybe even a little more too. There's just this interesting gap in there, but yeah. So I mean, it can happen to anybody. It doesn't matter your gender, your race, your I mean, socioeconomic, anything. Doesn't matter how much money you have, right? This could happen to anyone.
I used to say that a lot. My background was disability, and I would take my folks out in a day program, and people would be giving them all this pity and stuff like that. I was like, trust me, everyone in my car is probably leading a happier life than you. I know these
Yeah,
folks, and you know what? This is a population that does not disclude people. You
that's
could be
right.
any day, so be grateful for what you have, and just think about that, right? Because stuff like
Yeah.
that doesn't discriminate.
And that's the part that I love too. It's, when you're out here, if your mission, my mission in particular is helping other people in this, I have so many reasons why I'm here. And one of those is like you had read, like clearing my mind and finding a dream worth living, helping other people in many different ways. I've started, I, I used to work at a local hospital here in inpatient and outpatient. And the outpatient was working specifically with people in their first psychotic episode.
Mm,
And the population I absolutely loved, because I was meeting people from, you know, I would say lower income level, living in a hotel, with a mom who had a diagnosis, to somebody more affluent and, you know, drafted to play, or not drafted, but I'm drawing a blank on the word, but recruited to play football in college. And it's
yeah,
like, it doesn't matter where you come from. It's like this can affect people in similar ways. And I love that bond and the way it united people around similar thought processes. It was almost beautiful.
yes, yes, yes. I love that. That resonates. I've been very interested in, and my background psychology and
Mm,
whatnot. So I appreciate that as well. The mind is a fascinating place.
very,
It's a
yeah.
fascinating place. And it's just amazing how each of our minds can be so vastly different in so many ways.
Yeah, it is. And it's, I used to share this too, like schizophrenia is not far off than any, let's say, common person's mind, because
Yeah,
there are things that I've experienced that you can experience. It's like the spectrum of things that
right,
we all
right.
experience. And it's also another common thread that unites us. It just makes life, it just makes, for me, it makes me feel like life is so much more beautiful in that way. There's so much connection.
So David, for you, you kind of broke it into like three parts. One was kind of the beginning stages,
Hmm.
and then there was that mid part, and then there was the part where you're 3 years into doing this medication free. So what was that second space for you like?
It was, well, I'll tell you this too. I had, I dropped out of school when I had my first episode, and I had probably 9 months left in my degree. And I dropped out for 2 years, Jen, and like racked up a bunch of debt. Um, was getting calls all of the time from collectors because of the student loan debt. And I was living on $25 a day for disability and Social Security, and $19 of food nutrition benefits. And I mean, fortunately, I had the support of my mom. and I had a place to live. And I always told myself I wanted to go back to school. Like I wanted to complete it. I wanted to follow through. I wanted to get a job in design because I love art. And I felt like I had something to prove, something that woke me up, something that got me out of bed to do this thing so I could prove myself that I was well enough to go back.
Mhm.
And to this day is a very touching, heartfelt thing for me was my grandma volunteered my grandpa to go back to college with me.
Oh,
So he moved from Pinehurst up here to Charlotte or over here to
wow,
Charlotte.
that's a big change for probably a lot of folks that are getting a little older.
Yeah, he was 75 at the time. He he moved here to Charlotte. He and I got an apartment together, and he would drive me to and from school, and he would help me do some of my homework. He would do it ahead of me. I had this English class. It was a science fiction English class. So he'd read the literature, and then I would read the literature, and then we'd kind of compare notes for prepping for the tests. But I graduated finally with a bachelor's degree in graphic arts, and I made him a very similar diploma that was a bachelor of old farts degree. And this man, Jenny, hung it in his hallway. Like he has it to this day, hanging in his hallway. He's 80, almost 85 now.
That's amazing. So through something that some people without the support, without the wherewithal, could use to just take their whole life away from them and never get it back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just present to like the deepening of the relationship you got to have with your granddad through this. Like
It,
what a special thing to go through with him.
yeah, yes, exactly. With the entire family, to see the support in that, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
one, you're allowing him, and then two, my grandma stayed in Pinehurst. Yeah, it's just very, very thankful for those
Yeah,
moments.
right.
And even with that said, it was like, at the end of that, there was still all this stress, of like, okay, now the next thing. I'm sure you can relate. I'm sure many people can relate. Like, what do you do next, after you graduate? And even with all of the support, I hadn't had an episode in a while, maybe probably that entire time, a year or so. Right after I graduated, I got a job here in Charlotte, and it was like a training period,
Mhm.
and had another episode, Jen.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, a bad one, like one where I wrecked my car. I took my clothes off and I started running around the city, um, and I was eventually arrested naked, like running naked through the city with some shoes and socks on, but then a pair of boxers on my head. And I thought I could disappear if I peeled the rest of my clothes off, as these cops are, like fighting to get me, and was tased, and then the ambulance shows up, and
Must have
you say again, I'm sorry.
been scary.
Oh, very. And you go from, I mean, you hit these extreme emotional levels that it was so confusing anyways, because when you're in the headspace and you have these visceral feelings, and they almost don't relate. Some of them didn't relate. And then in the moment, it's like, wait, am I supposed to feel this way or this way in this moment?
Mm,
Because I'm really, really confused in all of this.
yeah.
And
Wow.
it brings a lot, yeah, it brings a lot out of you. And it also, I mean, things get real.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like so is it almost like you what you're doing is aligned for the space that you're in because that's what you're being driven to do. But like when you notice, like, okay, the cops are here now. Wait, I'm being tased now. Wait, there's an ambulance here. What's going on? Is it where you start to become, and I don't know that these are even the words we use, but is it where you start to become like more in a lucid space and you're like, oh shit, like, well damn, like,
Yeah.
your state shift like in the moment to where then you're like, what's going on right now?
Yeah, in many different ways. It's like the unconscious sometimes either comes into subconscious and will stay, or sometimes it comes into complete consciousness and it overtakes you. I felt this is very
Okay,
funny
okay.
because I'm not religious in that way, but I related myself to David in the Bible, and I thought that I would turn into the statue of David if I peeled off the rest of my clothes. So I'm fighting, I end up getting I thought you were about to spit out your water.
No, no, no.
um I was fighting them off of me, and I was kind of confused, like, you don't understand, I need to do this, like I need to get these clothes off of me, that way I'll turn into this statue, and and then that's it. But then instantly, like, I snapped back to this conscious reality, and it was settling for the time being.
Mhm.
um and then even after that, Jen, it's like I was put in this ambulance and they asked me where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
I was like, I have a hospital because something's not right. And they bring me there, and during my episode, I thought I was going to be homeless. Like I felt like I would die if I went back home. This is the tricky thing with schizophrenia for me, is like you're given ultimatums, and the ultimatums are so outlandish that it's like you either do this or you die, or you do this or your family dies. And it's like, and it almost, for me, it told me to do some very, very wild things or else.
Oh,
And so that's where some of this stuff comes up. And on this run, I had gotten rid of all of my clothing, my wallet, my ID, my money. I had taken this $20 bill and I had folded it up in this tiny square. And I thought, if I hid it, nobody would beat me up to try to find out where my money was. This is, talk about stigma. This was my stigma, thinking that somebody would beat me up to rob me,
right, right, right.
if I were homeless. So I tucked it into my cheek. Well, after I got arrested, I had swallowed this $20 bill, and it's still in there when I'm at this hospital, like I'm lying there in this gurney, and like all of the stimulation around me is really expediting more of the story. It just starts, I get to the hospital, it's kind of slow because now I'm in that conscious space, and then this smooth transition back into this weird reality, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And after, I don't know, must have been 5 or 6 hours, I was finally given a room, and this nurse came in to check my pulse, and I was going to get this $20 bill, and she thought I was choking myself. So the next thing I knew, all of these people ran into the room, and they literally, they threw me into this other bed and pushed me into another room and started strapping me to a bed. And now I'm rolling with it now because I'm in that mindset, and I'm rolling with this idea, like, am I supposed to fight them? And again, convoluted.
Right, right.
Um, and they end up strapping me all four, limbs, and somebody comes in and puts an injection into my leg. And I mean, the emotional place and the energy in that moment, I'm like, way up for my own level. And if I had to say, like a level 10, which probably felt unsafe to them. But then I wake up and they want to transport me to Chapel Hills, where I was going for this, for treatment when I was in Pinehurst. And they put me in the back of this van. Have you ever seen like a dog catcher's van?
I think so.
It's like metal.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like split down the middle. It's kind of, it was like that. They put me in this van that was all metal, this tight space, handcuffed both my wrists and my ankles. And can you still see me?
Now I can.
Okay, sorry. They handcuffed, both my wrists and my ankles, and they put me in the back of this vehicle, um, clothed now. And I just thought, all right, I'm going to go to sleep until I get to where I'm going. And they pick up somebody else and put her on the other side. and she's in a psychotic place, and so now it's like fuel to a fire.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Picked right back up, and next thing I know, I'm just in a different story, in a different it's like a movie had taken over, and now I'm the main character in this movie.
Well, and like what I'm over here thinking is, here you are, you've gone without an episode for a while, you're graduating, probably thinking, yeah, I'm gonna,
Right,
get my new job going, and then something of this magnitude happens.
right.
What next? How did you? Because the cool thing is we're here with you now. We've heard your bio. We know what we're doing.
Mhm,
So we know this. This ends well for you right now. But
mhm.
what did you do from there?
I mean, it really got interesting. That hospitalization really woke me up because
Okay.
I end up getting there,
How long did they have you
um,
there, David?
maybe 2 weeks.
Okay.
So I get there, and I one day I just, it's so funny because when you're a lot of people that are in this space, especially with mental health, there's a lot of religious connections there.
Hmm.
And at the hospital, what book do you think is next to you when you're hospitalized?
Bible.
Yes. So it like, can spill over. It's like, wow, that's ironically that's there.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so I remember seeing it and at my desk, and I took it and I moved it from my desk, and instead I put this notebook there because you get this notebook in a hospital, or you could get a notebook in a hospital, and I just started writing, and I just started writing out my thoughts. And over time, what it eventually did for me, the more I wrote out my thoughts, the deepest, darkest, especially when it comes to like the voices and things, I'd write them all out, and I learned to edit them. So instead of
Oh,
speaking them, I would go back, and it's like I took a script and I would just edit the script. And I would go back, and I would have different emotions that I would tie to this. Like, this is very angry, and this is what this feels like to me. And I'd write it out. And then this is like, if I met somebody who was angry like that, how else could I perceive it, outside of that emotion? And so I'd write it in that way. And the more I kept doing that, I really gave myself this mental flexibility. Like, I could go from extreme to extreme, and I started associating what could be here, what could be here. Where is it coming from? How do I feel it? What am I saying in that? And it really started to help me understand myself
and so you
more.
just started doing this. This was not a technique given to you.
No,
You just intuitively through writing.
somehow, yes,
How? Okay, that's
yeah.
profound.
And I kept it. I just kept it up, and I kept it
Yeah,
up, and then
yeah, yeah. It became a practice for you. It sounds like
exactly,
it
yeah.
sounds like a technique.
Well, it's something that you would do in school anyways. You're writing these papers, and if you're drawing inspiration from books or things, you're basically rewording it, right? You're putting
Right,
it in your
right,
own
right.
words. So that's what I did. I would let everything come out, and then I would reword it how I would. Sorry, somebody keeps trying to call me. I
Oh,
would
that's
reword it how I want it. Like, what kind of emotion am I trying to elicit
yeah,
here?
yeah.
So I didn't really start to understand that until probably right about the time that I wanted to come off of my medicine, that it
Mhm.
was a thing, like, this is really working for me.
Do you know, David, is this something that you do with others in this scenario? Is this something that is
Mhm.
being done with others in this scenario? Because God, it sounds like it should be.
It's funny you say that because I adopted this into when I told you I worked at the hospital,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was working with people, and a few people, it's what's great about hearing voices. It's like it's in your head. And sometimes the external world vibes on that, it makes it really real. And sometimes people, instead of writing it, they need to hear it themselves. They need to hear their own voice in their own head say their own things. So
Yeah,
what I would allow people
yeah.
to do is I would bring my phone, and I had a work cell phone, and I would let them record. Like, after building a lot of trust, I would let them record their whatever they're hearing, and then I would allow them to give themselves their own motivation, their own inspiration, their own positivity, and record that. And then I let them plug in their own headphones and hear their own voice in their head about the positive things, just reinforcing that.
Ah, that's powerful. How
It
was the response to that?
it was, I think it was amazing because some people just like, the way they looked at me and the way they saw it, it's like, because they've never heard, some people have never heard their own voice in their own head.
Gosh, well, schizophrenia or not, gosh, when I went through a lot and didn't have support when I was young, a huge part of it was going on walks because I realized if my
Hmm.
body is in motion and I'm speaking out loud,
Sure.
something different. Like my thoughts are more clear because I'm moving and I'm hearing it out loud, so I'm not getting as deep into the muck of
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
That became like a practice for me when I was, in a very rural town on my own, undersupported. Just go out and have your body moving and be vocal out loud so you can hear it on a feedback loop.
Yeah, that's good too. I used to use something similar when, if my mind was going too fast, I'd try to speed up my heart. So I'd try to get out of here and move more here. So in order to do
Oh,
that, so one thing for me was going on a run, because
yeah.
there are times when I'm on a run and my I just want to stop, like, stop here. But I would set a goal. It's like, I need to run to this telephone pole. And that was overriding the negativity. Like, you should stop. You should stop here. And I would kind of get out of it and push myself through breathing, just focusing on breath, and allow my heart to take me to the next goal. And it kind of got me more out of that. So similar to what you're saying, the walking, the exercise, the talking it out loud, the recording of your own voice, they're mantras, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I would imagine, I don't know if this is true, but I would imagine there are certainly plenty of people with the same diagnosis who aren't able to get themselves into quite the space that you have gotten in, where you're able to support people with it. You are, you are out there coaching and helping others, and what is it, like how is it, doing this now, like not medicated, or is there like a fear that's in there? How do you work with that?
Mm.
Like what's that like? We're doing
So
an interview series just kind of off the cuff because
sure.
I'm always, intuitive, and I'm like, your story is quite different than a lot, and going through the questions the way I normally do, it just doesn't seem, it just doesn't seem like the thing. Like
All
what's
right.
more interesting is like, because your journey is different. Like it's very fascinating because you've created something where I don't think that everyone can from this.
I've had many conversations with Kim. She's my girlfriend, and we talk about this a lot. And she's like, I have this strong belief that people can succeed, whatever way that is for them,
Yeah,
after
yeah,
it's identified. I believe this, for myself and for other people. And a lot of people, I would say, the majority of people that I saw at the hospital, they wanted off medicine. Think
mm,
about it, Jen. Like, they're
yeah.
20, early late teens, early 20s, maybe some in 30 years old, and they're like, I have to live the rest of my life with this stuff.
Oh, well, and I've been on medicine before in the past, like for a few things, and I promptly took myself off of it. Like I would see friends pass away, couldn't cry, like,
Yeah. Oh yeah. That.
and so I took myself off. I know how that feels, and I'm sure those were even stronger.
Though, and they are, and I'm not. I want to make this clear too. I'm not saying, go jump off of your medicine. For
Right.
me personally, I do believe that
Work with
people can.
professionals, everyone.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, and whatever is best for you,
yeah,
have
yeah,
somebody support you through that too.
yeah,
But for me, it's like, yes, that feeling, it's so interesting that you bring that up, because I felt, talk about the conflicting emotions. You're at a funeral and you can't cry, and you're like,
yeah, yeah.
man, I'm heartless.
Right, right.
Like, I don't have a soul. I'm
Mhm.
just not a kind person. And when you start to roll that ball down the hill, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right?
Right, right.
But in working with other people, um, I have seen a lot of success in that. I mean, over 100 people at the hospital alone, just outpatient, probably just seeing them in where they're completely psychotic, to they're opening up to me, and they're addressing it in a way, because you have the clinical side, and then you have somebody who has lived experience, and as a team, it's amazing. So
Yeah,
you have a therapist, you have a nurse practitioner, a nurse, a medication management kind of team, and then
yep,
peer. Oh, I was a peer support specialist, is what the title is, with somebody with lived experience in on that, right? So you're helping the support of this person, and what they shared with me really helped then go to the therapist. Like, if they're telling me these things they experience, it's like, man, it's one, it's common. And two, what you're experiencing, there's a lot to this that you can really learn from and use as a stepping stone. But the trust is the biggest first step for a lot of them. I mean, people will come out and tell you, like, thought of hurting somebody, hurting themselves. They have, like, thoughts of, I mean, oh, whatever it is, and it's like, I remember this kid one time, um, he was really close to suicide, uh, or his attempt at suicide, and he and I were having a talk on a walk, and he's like, I need to tell you something, but I don't know if I'm ready. And I'm like, okay, I mean, take your time. And that, just that little bit of, like, he gets to make a decision in this. And we just kept walking. We're on a walk,
Yeah.
and he told me, he told me something specific, and I'm like, oh, okay, tell me more. And as he goes on and he's talking about this stuff, he's like, I think I'm going, to ask for an assisted suicide because I can't do it myself. And I was like, but we're, to be frank with you, I was like, that doesn't happen in the state, one. And two, you don't have to do that.
Right. Right.
And when, we walked a few more steps, and he took this massive breath, Jen. He's just like, oh, I have never told anybody that before.
Wow.
And you couldn't see this in this kid. You couldn't see it at all. And he's not said it to anybody else. And so what we see is what's on the surface, but deep down, he's like, I mean, he was close. And I was like, we should go see somebody.
Sure.
I was out in the community with him, and I said, we should go, just come on in and talk with, so and so about this. And he was hospitalized for it, but when he comes out, he's like, thank you. I didn't realize I was as close as I was. And seeing somebody go from that extreme to many stages in between makes me believe that, one, resiliency, two, the grit, the love and the compassion, the empathy, and the reason why people are here is why they stay here.
Yeah. And so you're not currently still doing stuff at the hospital, right?
No, I recently
Okay.
took on more coaching because it's I mean, it's very similar.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of the stuff that you are sharing, it's just helping them put their minds somewhere else, focus on something outside of the stories that are coming in. So when now that you're focused more on coaching, David, um, are you is your niche supporting people to create despite having any like mental health issues, or is it just like you're working with anyone and everyone, or how is that looking for you now that you're supporting people in a similar way but a little bit different?
Sure, yeah, and it's on all of those
Okay.
spectrums too, Jen. Like, there are some people that come in that, they're all around us, right? They say 1 in 4 has a mental health condition. I
Well,
mean,
and reason why I was kind of thinking, was it it's tricky, right? Because as coaches, our job is to stay out of the story.
that's
But
right.
when someone has something going on, at
Uh,
some point, you also have to honor their experience, right?
of
It's
course.
why I coached a small group of visually impaired veterans for a year. I was the coach for it because I had a background in blindness and low vision. That was my profession.
Ah,
And so I knew how to stay out of the story and not make it realer, but at some point say, yeah, that's a thing. That's a thing that you go through, and other people aren't going to get that. Other coaches won't get that.
yeah,
And so I
that's
kind of
right.
had to know where to call them out, but also know when to say, no, we don't reflect story now. We honor this experience, and
Yeah,
this is a real thing. And so that's what
yeah,
I'm kind of thinking, why you would be such a good coach for something like that. Because not all coaches can do that, I don't think.
that's right. I think there's a fine distinction between
Yeah,
real and true
yeah,
too. Because what
yeah.
you're feeling could very well be real based on. I mean, your thoughts influence your emotions, which
I love
influence
that.
your actions, which also, they all influence each other. So
Yeah.
whatever headspace you could be in could influence your not only emotional place, but what you do next.
Oh, for sure.
And if that's a little twisted or convoluted, or a little black and white, let's say,
Yeah.
then you can add in a few things in there to really scale it out, to give somebody more options to choose from. And that's, I mean, suicide was big in that. It's like either this or this. It's like
Right. And
I
that's
have
the
to,
better
because
option. So we're going to do that.
right, exactly, to
Right.
kind of keep yourself away from either the pain or
Right.
feeling isolated and alone because nobody gets you. It's
Right.
like once you create that vulnerable space for somebody to open up about that, it's like, you really hear these things come up. It's like, do you really believe that?
Right.
Or because you believe that, could you also believe this
Right.
or
Right.
this?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's that mental flexibility. Like you're in this now, you can move a little more.
Well, and that like strikes me as the coaching piece, right? Because even for a person who might not have a diagnosis, we're still really good at this or that,
Oh, of course, of
right?
course,
Like in
yeah,
not
absolutely.
expansive thinking.
Well, this leads you right to the next point too, is about the medicine. It's either like this, either you take the medicine, or because of your past, you end up back in the hospital. What
Right.
what happens if you go running naked again? What
Right.
happens
Right.
if you die by suicide? And it's like, man, I'm up against all of that. It's either I either take the medicine or I have to face those things.
Right. Right.
So that's where it's like, okay, if this is the thing, if, let's say, for example, talking about stories in your mind, the TV would talk to me a lot. First episode, even 10 years later, the TV was really influencing me and my actions. And I remember as I was on 450 milligrams of this very, very heavy medicine. After being on 9 different medicines, Jen, I finally got to this one that was like, whatever, this magic pill. And um, the use of the medication actually almost became more of a barrier than not using,
Wow.
because I would take the 450 milligrams at night, and let's say I was taking it at 7 o'clock. By 8 o'clock, I couldn't move. I was drooling. I couldn't walk. My body just felt like limp. And I mean, there were times when I've dropped a cup of hot tea on me because the medication, or I got up to use the restroom in the middle of the night and I fell and I hit my head on the counter.
Yeah. Yeah. So at some point, I'm guessing you're weighing, right? Like what is the impact?
Exactly.
How do I want to live and feel?
Not only that for me, but then everybody else is weighing this too. My psychiatrist, my
Right.
therapist,
Right.
my parents, society. Like the news would come on and say this person went off the medicine, they shot, or they did this, and it just added to that level of
Right.
like, oh, my son has that, or this person has that. What if they do that? It builds on fear, and it was the most difficult thing for me at first. I was forcing it through, like, nope, this is what I'm going to do. I would try to sneak and not take it, and it was obvious, because I'm not drooling.
Right. 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 Right.
So, so at some point, I remember, this is odd, and this could be another conversation too. I remember looking up the chemical compounds of my medicine for some ungodly reason. Don't know why. I looked up the chemical compounds, which was C18H19CLN4, and I was like, there's got to be food with this stuff in it. So I started looking at foods with that kind of stuff in it. And I was interested. I was deeply interested. I'm like, okay, so I can't take hydrogen and oxygen, put them together to make water. But if I take on some carbohydrates and I take on these different foods that have these compounds, similar compounds in them, maybe what if that counterbalance some of this stuff?
Brilliant.
So I started that way. And the most fascinating thing to me at that time, I remember going to like a Costco or Sam's or something, and out of the corner of my eye, Jen, a glimmer of light just like gleaming out of the corner of my left eye. And it was golden. I looked over and I just walked over to it. And if you go to these big box stores, you can't buy one of something, you buy like
Right. Right.
bulk.
Right.
Bulk. They were olives. And so I come back with this like 9 rack of olives, and my mom looks at me like, what are you doing? You don't eat olives. And I said, I know, but something drew me to them. So I take them home, and maybe I eat a couple, and I go back to my research and I'm looking in. Guess what's on that list?
Olives.
You know it. It gave it, to this day, it still gives me cold chills thinking about it. I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah. You
whoa, am
were
I
guided by
onto something?
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so that started my journey there, like doing that, and then blood type stuff, started changing that around, and vegan. Now I've been vegan for the same amount of time, 3 years. And what really set me off on that was I told my mom, I said, Mom, I think I'm going to come off of my medicine, and here's how. And so I told her, and she was open to listening to me. She's like,
Well, and like what I'm hearing and why people were perceptive is, you weren't like, gotta get off, I'm gotta get off. I'm like, you knew, and this is coaching, right? You knew what you wanted to step into. So you weren't
that's right.
running from it, you were creating.
That's right. And then
That's
doing all
rolling.
the writing and
Yeah,
all of these efforts that I had been putting
yeah,
into, and
yeah.
um when I told her about it, she's like, all right, but if you get like you were at this time, you're going back on. I said, I'll do you
Sure.
one better. I'll put barriers ahead of that. So I
Yeah.
put, like, if I get to this point, I already know I need some work. And if I get to this point, then I'm either
You
not
got
paying attention.
checkpoints built in.
Exactly. So
Oh,
I,
so
I
smart. So
basically
smart.
built it out. So, and to this day, I'm still open to medication. It's just not top of mind. It's like,
Right.
it's down my list because now I have all of these different tools that I can use to help myself, but completely still open. If it's going to be detrimental to my life or to my well-being or anybody around me, I'll take it if nothing else works for me.
I love that. And,
Thank you.
I think, so anyone watching, someone watching is going to have some kind of mental health or know people like y'all. I just got to throw this in now. Please share this with anyone who might need to hear this because, you know, I mean, gosh, and you're speaking through the lens of like schizophrenia even, right? But I'm even thinking of like one of my friends whose husband's having horrible panic attacks and he's trying some treatments now that they're doing like ketamine spray and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's great. And what I would really love to see is also attention paid to strategies to cope with
That's
anxiety,
right.
tools to cope with anxiety. Because, to your point, when you are working on so many different things, diet, lifestyle,
Yeah.
tools, practices, you're leaving no stone unturned.
Yeah.
In
That's
my
right.
experience, you got to be aggressive with stuff like that if you want it to work.
That's right. And you definitely can. I mean, if like time is the only constant, right? So it will come in waves anyways, even if you don't take it on, maybe it could be there. 30 years down the line, I could have been thinking like, what if I came off now? But I made it like, all right, now is going to be it. Here's my strategy. I'm going to put it in front of somebody who I believe is going to support me.
Mm-hmm.
And then go from there, and then whatever comes up, whatever needs to be addressed, address it. But it wasn't necessarily impulsive.
Right, right.
um, I was just aware that something needed to change for me.
That's really powerful. And what I love about it is true of anything, right? Like, right, we could not even be talking about mental health right now. People need to notice what's in front of them that needs to change.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And what to do with that change,
Yeah.
right? Do you embrace it? Do you?
Well, I mean,
There's a
just
lot
it's
of.
everything you're sharing, right? Like I'm listening, like anyone who's listening is going to benefit, whether this is mental health or not. Like what you're talking about, making a plan, putting it in front of someone who's going to support you. It's so a recipe for creating what's next.
That's how I look at coaching too, is like some
Yep.
people are at point A in their
I'm thinking
life.
like that.
They're at point A, right? And they maybe want to get to a point B, but they don't know what that is. Or they know what point B is, but they don't know the steps to get there.
Right.
Or they know point A, point B, the steps to get there, but they don't have the support to get them there. That's all coaching, and it's relating to people, it's connecting, it's empathy, it's helping you achieve your dreams or goals. And I feel like that's why I'm here, to not only help me get to my dreams and goals, but also help people around me get to their dreams and goals.
I love this. This has been such a fun interview. Like I want to just keep going forever. Because it's such a different and unique one. Um, and there's so much gold in here. I'm even over here thinking now of my coaching misunderstood series where, I do my series coaching as a tool too. And I keep trying to show people because so many people don't realize, you can fall in love with yourself through coaching. You can do this through coaching.
Yeah.
And now I'm even like, thinking of like, ooh, we need to do like one of those together where we focus on like mental health or something, and like how coaching can be a tool for that. Uh,
Yeah, of course.
I'm percolating over here and making notes and things, but this is
It,
just such a fascinating conversation, because just the mind never ceases to amaze me. It's
yeah,
wild. And you have just you haven't been shy about getting in there and just trying things and tinkering. And that didn't work. I'm going to try something new.
that's right. That's right. And I think, the empathy with it all too, it made it was a humbling experience to work with people at the hospital because I saw them at their worst, and it made me not feel alone. And I really hope to not make them feel alone, and to see them in that place and to see them succeed. My heart was so big for them. And I see it in other people too, like these stories that are going on in their mind. It's like, man, people are suffering. And I just, I feel for you too.
Yeah, right. Like just the stories that we see on a regular basis that are holding so
Yeah.
many humans back.
Yep. That's right. Blocking them from what they want.
There's so much gold in this, David. I am so grateful. And, again, amazing listeners, I ask this of all shows, because the cool thing is I have gone on to see people watch the episode that's right for them, and they start to think, maybe I can get out of this exhausting experience I'm stuck in. Maybe I can go over here. So it gets people thinking, and
Yeah.
people seeing possibility for them. And what I really love, I mean, so many things, right? Like, because this is going to be so supportive of people with mental health and not, you know, how you use food as a medicine. Y'all, food's a medicine no matter what we're talking about, right? Like, food's a medicine. And I love that you used it for this. And I love the distinction. And I think all of you humans watching this, it goes a long way for each of us to ask ourselves, is this feel real or is this true? They're different. Because again, the shitty stories we tell ourselves, you're not good enough, you have to work really hard, you're not smart, they feel real, and yet they're not true. So I love that distinction. So powerful.
Thank you. I wrote something, if you don't mind me sharing. It's just a brief.
I would
Is
love
that
it.
is that okay?
Yeah, I would love it.
Um, I want to share this with somebody. I'm kind of or share this with people, but I'm holding this in my hands and I kind of read from it. But um, you have untapped and unlimited creative potential that can help you make intentional and transformational decisions. Be creative.
That's beautiful. David, thank you for, and we went a little bit over, so I hope I haven't kept you at all. Normally I
Nice.
check in, but I'm like, nah, he has a clock. We're going to keep rolling. This feels good.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for your grit. Thank you for your resiliency. Um, it's so serendipitous that you're here, because I did a coaching misunderstood with Kim. And I
Yeah.
just mentioned at the end, oh, Kim, I'm going to have you back for Living a Bold Life one of these days, but we'll leave a little space so we can have your face fresh again. And that was when she was like, oh my gosh. She was like, who would be great for this? She was like, my partner, David. And I'd known of you from Stephanie, because Stephanie was like, oh, I've done reads for them.
Yeah.
I know them. And so, as soon as Kim shared with me, I was like, let's do it. I emailed you that day.
Mhm.
And I don't take the gift of this level of authenticity and transparency lightly. I market these shows as off the highlight reel. We're going to talk about stuff that people aren't talking about in other places. And so to find people who are so willing to do that, it truly means everything. And I know that these episodes get into the hands of the people that need them.
Yeah.
And I especially love that my people are building up like my YouTube channels and stuff, because this conversation right here, this is one where I'm like, this just needs to keep going and going and going.
Yeah, you know, am also grateful for you for providing this space, because this is typically a private conversation,
Yeah, yeah,
and to have this conversation with somebody on here, but also be shared with other people to hear it, um, I hope is very valuable and is beneficial, and really reassures to other people that, one, there is this space that you can have these conversations, and two, that um, that you feel this sense of reassurance that you can do the things that you want to do. And there's proof all around every single one of us, and really honing in on those stories rather than the negative ones, right?
yeah. And that's what I love about these stories is like this one in particular. We all have challenges, and the truth to me is that some of us do face some that are a little bit more significant possibly than others. And to hear, anyone in oppressive systems, structures, stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
sure.
whenever, you just hear like people have really, through their grit and resiliency, said, I'm not going to believe this. I know there's more for me. I'm not going to take this label and get too stuck in it, right? Like I'm going to pay attention here, and it's why I coach that group, because I worked in the field of disabilities for a decade, mostly blindness and low vision, and I watched their friends and family putting labels on them of what they couldn't
Mm,
do, and I was like, no, I'm coming into the house and we're doing this. If I do my assessment and it's safe to do some cooking, we're doing cooking. It's
that's right.
figure out how. You can be here and watch, but if I deem them safe to do it, they're going to cook you dinner. It doesn't matter if they can see. And so, it's always been in my heart, like we use the labels so we can get proper channels of treatment, support, know what to do. But I never want to see people making us become that label to a
That's
point
right.
where we're just in it in a way we don't need to. And, from my background, like this stuff is really close to my heart. Even before, you and I pressed record, where I shared the label I had of
Hmm.
OCD and ADHD that fed in a loop. I could go to town with that label if I wanted to, but I create outside of it, but still honor those parts are in there. So be mindful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point too, because it's active in some way, right? And
Yeah, yeah. Like I was just telling you, my breakthrough has brought some of that
yeah.
stuff up a little bit, like the reminder of, okay, yeah, yeah, you still have that in there, girl. So, David, this has been amazing.
Well, thank you. I agree, and thank you for allowing this space. Honestly, I'm very grateful.
I mean, this space is amazing to me, because I'm often the person where I'm the person who gets very uncomfortable, like when I'm just meandering around places and there's just surface level conversations
Oh
happening.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
I get it.
what do we do right now? Can we just
Yeah.
get into it? Like, let's just go there. I mean, I'm ready. Are you? So,
Yeah.
like, these spaces are like my comfort zone.
Yeah, and so many not, right? Like,
Yeah. But I'm like, I'm
yeah.
comfortable here. Let's talk about all the things right now.
Well, thank you again, and I feel like it's obviously a wave coming of people to do this, especially the younger generation. I feel like they're standing on the shoulders of giants, right?
Yeah.
And there are many of us out here that are giants that have paved the way. So, to all of you, of
Oh, thank you again, David.
course, thank you.
And to our amazing viewers, thank you for holding the space. These conversations are more powerful because of the space that you hold. Share it, share it, share it. And whatever platform you're watching this on, this makes its rounds and it keeps making more. Um, the information I shared about David will be there. There's going to be links to follow him, to reach out to him, to connect with him. So you will have all of that. And I will see all of you in 2 weeks from now, since we're doing this every other, and David, I'll come back and say goodbye to you after I stop recording. I now say that because I'm like, oh no, I lost my guests, they're gone. You stay put. And guests, we love you. Thank you for being here. We would not have a show without you.
Bye.